Let's paint a watercolor snowman. Start by mixing a lot of water with a dark blue color. An indigo or Payne's gray will work perfectly. Now we'll paint a circle for the snowman's head, starting first with a stroke of our watery blue wash. Now I'm rinsing off my brush and then using clean water to spread that paint around to form that circle, which will be the snowman's head. By using this blue color, we're actually painting a white object on white paper by painting everything that's essentially not white. Before we move on to the next section, I'm taking a little bit of that mixed wash and just dropping it on the left-hand side of the snowman's head here. That's going to help create a form shadow, which is going to give that feeling of 3 dimensions and the fact that this is actually a snowball and not just a flat circle. Now going right below the head, we're going to make the middle section of the body, and I just created the bottom half of a circle, butted up right next to the head, and following the same steps using clean water to spread around that wash and get it nice and evenly wet before dropping in a little bit more color on the left-hand side. Also dropping in a little bit of shadow right underneath the top section, because you will have a little bit of shadow to show that separation, and that's going to help create form as we continue to paint our little snowman. Now repeat the same exact steps for the bottom section, using that light wash to fill it in, using clean water to spread that paint around, and dropping in a little bit more dark color on the side. You can make your snowman as expressive as you'd like. He could be tall, thin, skinny, or she could as well. So no real way to mess this up. It really is just a snowball. Now we're going to mix up a little bit thicker version of that blue color. And while everything's still wet, I'm going to go back in and drop a little bit more shadow underneath each section, as well as on the left-hand side of each of these snowballs, to create a little bit more contrast and even more form. Once I drop that color in, I'll clean off my brush, dry it off a bit, and then just use a clean damp brush to kind of spread that pigment around a bit, just to make it a little bit more seamless of a blend. And you can see our snowman is really starting to take form. When I'm using this technique, I'm typically using a very light pressure with my brush. I'm just trying to spread that pigment around a little bit. I call it a little bit of a scrubbing motion, but just a very light touch with the tip of my brush. And there you go. There is our 3 shapes. And now we're going to put in a little bit of a ground. So using that same color, just put a stripe at the top of your foreground, right next to your snowman, and then we're just using clean water to pull that color down and create this kind of illusion of the snowman sitting in a pile of wet, fluffy snow. Now, before we move on to the next step, you do want to dry your painting completely. I used a heat tool to speed up the process a little bit, and now we're going to go in with a little bit more of our blue color, still a kind of a medium wash here, and we're going now wet onto dry. And just the same areas where we had dropped it in before, go ahead and put a stripe of that color, and then again underneath each of the sections here to create that bit of a shadow. And we're going to use a clean damp brush again to just blend that out a bit. Putting this wet on dry layer on top of our wet on wet layer is going to give us a lot of more contrast and even more form for our snowman. You can see it really does look like there's a light source on the right hand side, there's a shadow on the left, and you can tell that these snowballs are stacked on top of each other because there's a little bit of a shadow underneath each one. Now continue this step in each of the sections, making sure to blend it out until it's to your liking. And then once again, we're going to want to make sure that this layer is completely dry before moving on to the next step, which is painting all of the fun details on our snowman, like his nose, his buttons, and everything that makes the snowman, well, a snowman. Once this is completely dry, I'm going to mix up a dark color. I do have a lamp black on my palette here. You could, of course, mix your own black. But essentially I'm just going to make 3 little dots here on the mid section that are going to be pieces of coal forming the buttons, and also 2 on the top to form the eyes of our snowman. Now I'll rinse my brush, and we're going to give our snowman a little carrot nose. So I'm going to grab some of my orange paint here and just make a quick little carrot nose. And of course, our snowman would not be complete without some sticks for arms. So I'm mixing up a dark brown color now, and then we're going to just try to randomly paint in some little stick arms to finish off our snowman. I mixed up the color, and I'm using just the tip of my brush to make these fine lines. And you know, there's not very many ways to mess up a stick, so don't be too hard on yourself here. And I'm just going back in with a little bit more color to darken these up. Just dropping that in since it's already wet, and the color will just kind of flow where you had put it down first. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, making a wonky stick arm. Dropping in additional color if you need to darken that up. And there we have our little watercolor snowman. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Happy painting!